New video. And today we're talking about how to build a fantastic Warhammer 40k list so you can get it right the first time and not have to go back and spend ridiculous amounts of money revamping your list. And if you couldn't guess it right, that's what I did, and I'm trying to teach you to not make that mistake and so you can continue on. Now, I'm making this video for a couple of reasons. The first reason is obviously because this is in conjunction with another video I made, which is how to pick your dream faction. So if you don't understand this video completely and some of the steps don't really make a lot of sense, and you feel like I'm skipping over information, go check out that video. I'll have it linked in this video. Basically, it teaches you how to pick a great faction and just simply get around the whole what do I pick, how do I pick it, and just move straight onto the army building list. So go watch that video first, go watch this video second. And the second reason is because I've been building my hunt list recently, and I'm just thinking like, damn, the process I'm using to make this is actually been crafted and kind of like, not perfected, but it's been refined over the times of me having to build almost like 10 lists now, because for, like, not only for me but for other people and just for general purpose use. So I've actually had a lot of experience in list building, and I believe that this process is not a bad process, and it's the one that I use to basically make a good list so I don't have to go back on it and just make a bunch of stuff. Now, I'm not saying I'm building the best list in the world or I build absolute tournament level lists, but I'm saying if you are more of a casual or player getting into competitive play and you want to build a list without having to continuously go back and forth between different units or different processes, I believe this step process is a fantastic process, and it will save you so much time and most importantly save you a bunch of money in the overall run. So take my advice, don't take my advice, I don't really care, but you clicked on this video, so I'm going to teach you something amazing. So let's jump straight into it with how to build a fantastic Warhammer 40k list in 3 steps. Yeah, 3 steps. Now, step 1 is army goal. You see, when people build a list, they more or less do like hours of research in the wrong way. People are so disciplined with research these days, but they do it in the wrong way. They'll do research competitive units, how to play competitive units, what to put competitive units, and just simply focus on competitive units, full stop. And they'll just either Control C, Control V the competitive list into their list, or they'll just pick competitive units and then just smash the spare points in whatever they feel like, and then that's their list. And they take into a competitive match or take into a regular match, and they lose because they don't understand anything. And they're like, what happened? Because they didn't understand their army goal, and so they built their list in the wrong way that orientates just competitive meta units and not the army goal. So what is the army goal? Well, let me explain like this. The goal of 40k is to win. Now, there can be situations where you don't want to win, you just want to learn, and you actually want to lose because it will teach you more, like whatever, but we're talking about a situation, if you want to win, most of the time, you're playing 40k to win the game, for credit, for respect, just to win the game in general. That's the whole point of the game overall. And how we do this, well, not and, but how do we do this? You see, no one's ever asked the question that. You see, every single army has a different way of doing this. Every single army wants to do this in a different way. You see, if we didn't have this, then the game would just be like chess. Everyone would just have different cool looking chess pieces, which actually isn't the worst thing in the world, custom chess pieces, but that's why 40k is just a lot more in-depth than chess. It's so much more varied because an army doesn't want to just have the same amount of movement, same amount of stuff. We all have the same amount of rules, but each army does it in a different specific way that allows them to win compared to the next army. So this is what you need to identify and basically just plan your army around completely. Now, every army has an army goal. Every army has a different way they want to win for the game. Some are stronger than others, some have really specific ones, some have really like broad ones, and really just kind of like not really focused ones. What I like to put this as is that each army, basically I'm going to draw a diagram right now to help you understand. Each army will fall into one of these 3 categories, either exterminate, secondary masters, or don't die. All these 3 basically sum up most, if not all, of the playstyles and army goals in the entire game of 40k. Now, where your army is will vary, and it will allow you to fall into the different categories. Maybe you're an extremely killy army like Tailor and simply just want to exterminate and kill with long range firepower, then you're going to be quite up high at the top of exterminate. But if you're more of like a killy, low strength unit, like low to wounds unit, who can move really fast and have a lot of scoring potential but also low killing potential, you might be a lot more into the exterminate and secondary missions, so the combination there, but you're going to be far from not die because obviously you're not very fit in that sense. Or you could be like Death Guard, who's extremely much on killy and also don't die, keeping that toughness up, but you leave secondary missions behind a little bit in terms of the majority of your units. Now, well, obviously you fall on strength and weaknesses, you'll start to vary depending on where you are, but this isn't necessarily to say like, oh, you know, you lose secondary missions, you lose exterminate. This is just where the army majority wants to play. So it's not saying that you lose any one factor you're not in. It just more or less depends on like where you want to be, basically, where you want to show up and how you really want to play. So you're either going to be really focused on 1-1 and maybe not too focused on 2-1s, or you'll be focused mediumly on 2-1s and maybe not too strongly on another one. And whatever you get, that's completely fine. Now, how do I find out my army goal? Because it's great to understand all this jazz, great to understand how this all works and basically what you want to go with. But after you've got this little pie chart, it's like, how do I know my army plays? How do I know the core idea of my army? Well, there's a very easy way to find this out. Army rule and competitive units. The army rule is the basis and the core aspect of your army. Grey Knights are a great example. Their army rule is teleport. Wow, teleporting, getting around the board fast. Who would have thought half their units orientate towards more elite stuff? Oh, more elite stuff means more tanky stuff. More tanky stuff means probably higher OC, and they're going to want to be scory. So these guys work really well into secondary missions. I simply just understood that from reading their thing, teleporting. Oh wow. Or you look at orcs. Orcs have a whole round of increased melee threat. Obviously, they probably want to orientate towards an exterminating based army for just that killy based potential. Or you look at things like Death Guard. Death Guard's whole purpose is obviously to walk up the board and do melee damage. Oh wow, their army rule is all about minusing the toughness in a certain aura based way. Who would have thought? So a great way to find out is to get the army rule understood, because that will tell you a lot about the army and what their primary reason is inside of a 40k game. Next one is going to be competitive units. Competitive units are usually competitive units for a specific reason inside the army. Now, there can be competitive units because they're just generally good, like the Avatar of Cain is just really good at doing damage and killing whatever's in front of it. Like, Tau Crisis Battlesuit Blobs are good because they're just killing whatever's in front of it. Now, most of the time, you could say that, but some units actually, more or less, are competitive for different reasons. Like, they want to come to the army rule, especially the army rule, and more or less the strategies go on. But competitive units can be great, but sometimes competitive units, like I said, are just there because they're just an amazing unit, full stop, and any army would take it. So, keep it in mind, keep it there. But these two factors are a great way of finding your army goal and a great way of continuing down the path. So, once you figured out your army goal, once you figured out, okay, my army, let's say for my orcs, for my orc list, my army is all about high pressure melee damage while having a good amount of board control so I can do a bit of scoring at the same time, but more or less high pressure melee damage. You got your army goal. I got my army goal. Hopefully you got yours. Let's move on from there. Now, well, step 2 is, well, it's supposed to say time, but, type, is time to assemble your band of test weirdos. Yeah, we're already on the test phase. There's no more blubbering about it, there's no more messing around, there's no more research. We're straight into it with this action. Now, we can start building our practice list. Now, this list right here is all about testing the waters. It's all about experimentation. It's all about understanding and building a list based off the pre-knowledge that we've gotten now. So, let's get right into it. Now you just simply go, okay, well, my army goal is all about high pressure melee damage and somewhat board control. So, I'm going to want units, kind of more tanky elite units, that take up the board with high amounts of unit control. But because obviously I'm playing the hunt wants more oriented towards, okay, we want to fish out, based on my army rule, a lot more melee damage on specific units and kind of hunting down through the list and having good board control with our high kind of really good melee units. So more or less, I'm really focusing on high pressure melee damage with my hunt list. So I'm going to want those high pressure units. Okay, well, who provides that? Squig Hogs provide that. Beast Snagger Boys provide that. These high kind of melee units like Mega Knobs and Warboss and Mega Armor provide it. See my process there. See how I did that there. You want to find out, okay, this is my army goal. This is my detachment goal. What from there am I going into? So figure out what units kind of best oriented towards that. What units are going to be really good at doing that. Competitive or not, doesn't matter. Don't research the meta and just pick meta units. Figure out what units are good. But also, once you've kind of devised that basic summary of what competitive units are and what aren't competitive units, and you've kind of assembled a list that isn't too competitive or whatnot, you can start doing some experiments. What are some units that would work really well? When I was doing my The Hunt list, I was experimenting between either taking 8 or 4 Man's Quick Hogs and taking Mozrog, or just 2 Beast Boss on Squigosaurs. So do some experimentation. Do some combos that maybe like you think might work. After all, this is just an experiment. There's no need to worry. There's no need to orientate. You may say, oh, well, I'm going to build this list for like absolutely nothing. Now, yeah, you might. And the thing is, that's okay. You're not going to be spending thousands of more dollars on the pass. This is simply just a test list. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that you want to just kind of experiment in the wrong way and just build a completely random list. You're going to have, and honestly, trust me here, from the knowledge you gained from the army goal, you're already going to build a pretty solid list with this test list, and you might have to spend maybe a couple of like $200, $300 revamping it for the actual list. So just, it's okay. I know it sounds a bit weird and a bit like off-put, but trust me, from the knowledge you gain from the army goal, that will tell you so much more about the army. You don't understand the strength of the army goal and how much you're actually going to have from it. So, freaking just do it. Build your experiment list. Experiment with some things. Have like 2 or 3 units if you're feeling a bit like obviously lucky that you maybe aren't like known in the meta too much, but you've seen pop off in a couple of areas. You think, you know what, this army could work. I've done research. I feel like that they fulfill the army goal really well. And then just experiment, do some tests, run some tests, and then just like kind of run the math a little bit, obviously. But then just play a solid 5 to 10 games with this list and take tons of notes. Just simply assess everything that's happening in the game. Go, okay, this unit was really good because X, Y, and Z. Figure out why they're good. Slowly learn how your units play into your game. And then, once you've got that, take those notes, take the memorized notes or the conjunction notes you have with you, and we can move on to the third and final step of building a 40k list. And that is time to assemble your main band of winners. This is where we finalize the list and get good. Now, the problem with this step is that so many people just go, okay, well, I figured it all out, I know what to do. But there's a couple of things and a couple of crucial things you want to follow to build a core aspect list of this type. Now, the first one, we're going to build a really goddamn list. This is going to be a good, we're going to build a goddamn good list. So, follow these steps and trust me, you'll go good. Now, the meta to purpose ratio. You see, what I mean by meta is I mean by just simply competitive units that are seen throughout the game as really good in the army, and purpose being those experiment units that you try because you think will work, or you like having in your army because they work well for you, maybe not necessarily for the meta, but they still work good in your game. What I've found is that the best and most great ratios for it is a 60 to 70% meta ratio and a 40 to 30% purpose ratio. This ratio is fantastic, and it just simply allows you just to pop off in an insane way. So let's just say, for example, you could have like 6 squads in your army, and like let's just say your army was comprised of 6 units. So like you had one main character, like you just had like an absolute beast, you had a beast unit, like your main warlord unit, and then you had 5 other regular just infantry based units. You know, let's just say that was your army, for example, just for simpler terms. Like the majority of army. So your main purpose character, and then like 2 other units would be purpose, and then or like 3 or 4 other units would be a meta based units, and then like 2 units will be purpose units. It's not a lot, and it can seem a bit weird. Obviously, if you're playing a casual game, you can take whatever you want, but in a competitive list, a great ratio is around a 70 to 60% ratio for meta and 30 to 40%, because it allows you to take a good hefty amount of strong units. So if your purpose units are maybe a bit flaky, or the way it worked, you still have tons of backup stuff. But it also shows if your purpose unit works really well, you can still bring hand with a decent amount of units to pop off in that sense. So if you want to take some cool units, I would say construct 70 to 60% of your list first, based on just strong, core hearty, well-known units that are going to perform well, and we just know are going to perform well, and then build some fairy dust stuff later, and go from there basically. And you'll trust me, it works really well because you have units that you want in your army list and makes your army look a bit cooler on the table and whatnot. Obviously, you can run full meta, you can run full purpose, depends on competitive or casual ratios. Now, try and optimize the number of units that are fulfilling your army goal. really focus on the meta especially, but also in the purpose, heavily in the purpose. Try and really optimize this. So for example, like I said before, my to hunt list, beast snaggers, and beast boss and beast snagger boys, plus quick hog boys. I want to be running those things. So the majority of my list is optimized with that kind of stuff. I have a pain boy with 10 beast snagger boys for other purposeful reasons, like I've devised with the scrag and tash. I can have that moving around the board, but that's a purpose-based unit for me. The majority of my list is made up and comprised of well-known construct units that are going to perform well in this list. So always go back to your army goal. Always refer back, like this unit's ability, it allows me to hit critical hits on 5s. Okay, is that working for my army rule? Okay, yeah, it does work really well. The points are really high. Okay, can it work? Okay, no, it can't work. Points too high, I'm going to have another unit. Always refer back to your army goal, because it just makes the process 10 times easier and allows you just to really kind of like focus in on one specific unit. Now, before you pick meta, understand why it is meta. Why is this unit meta? Basically, the army goal. Never ever have a unit that simply is just meta. I know it's tempting, and there are some units that you can do that with, like either just full stop good, but sometimes if you just take 3 squads of a meta unit because they're meta and you don't really understand why they're meta, more or less, besides they have great killing potential, you can really kind of like lackluster on a lot of their abilities. Like a lot of the stuff, the reason that grots and like knobs are so good, and that is also their screening potential and how much board control they can have at one point in time. I didn't know that a couple months back, so don't just pick a meta unit because you've heard it's great killing, great this, blah blah blah. Understand like pretty much fully why they're meta and why you're taking them for a competitive reason in the first place. Now, also keep in mind of stratagems when you're building your list. Don't just build it for the purpose of building a list, or building a list with basically units. Build it off stratagems as well. Build it into stratagems. Apply stratagem into, okay, this unit is going to benefit so well from this one stratagem I have in my detachment or my index or whatever you're up to right now with your army. So use stratagems as well. Use maybe enhancements are more or less because they can't just go in there like for a plan. Like you can also intertwine enhancements, but more or less stratagems just for that one-time use. So keep in mind, stratagems and enhancements, compile them into your list, have units that are kind of not solely relying on that, but are kind of benefiting largely from that, and can work really well in conjunction. Also just allows you to know where your stratagems can go, and how you can use them effectively in the game. Basically, you're just pre-planning stratagems into your list, so you don't have to waste time and have a random event. You can kind of comprise certain events with stratagems and enhancements, allow you to perform that much well on the table. And the last one is every unit should have a purpose. This goes in well with before you pick the meta. Why does it matter? Don't just pick a unit because you can pick a unit for a specific reason. So every unit should have a reason to perform in the game. Every unit should have a reason and a good way of performing in the game. This is why I hate when people like take slow time in their movement phase, because this shows that not every single unit has a purpose. Not every unit has a distinct way of movement. Trust me, when you have purpose in your entire army list and every unit in your army has a specific way of like basically making your army goal complete, then your movement phase will be like that. You'll play so much faster because you know where you're going. You're not like literally like, oh, this unit could attack them. Like, if you don't have to attack a unit, don't attack it. It's all about comprising of how to win with your army goal, but also making sure every unit has a specific reason they're there in the first place. If they don't have a reason, take them out and find a unit who can have a purpose. But that's going to be how to build a great 40k list in under 30 minutes. So, hope you really enjoyed this video. Took me a bit of time to comprise these exact steps, but I hope it works really well for you. Follow this process, trust me, you'll come up with a great list. Now, obviously, some of the steps might seem a bit sketchy, like, oh, I have to revamp and make a test list. Oh, but trust me, the money you'll actually, maybe you might spend on that, if you're revamping it largely, will be a lot more saved if you just buy a list and continuously have to change it based off stuff. So, keep these steps in mind. If you don't like it, leave a dislike. If you like it, leave a like. Honest feedback always works for me. But, hope you enjoyed this video. Like always, do all the cool YouTube stuff, subscribe, whatever, and hope to catch you in the next one. Mwah.